Hello, everyone. I'm the J.R. Stewart, creator of the Ways of the Caveman series. And this is a series that's generally directed towards men because here is where we make better men, the school for the better making of men. But today's series, next probably maybe a two-part or three-part series on purpose, that's really geared towards men and women, husbands and wives. And I think as a couple, you probably should sit down and watch it together because there's a great deal of information to be gathered here. And then I'm hoping, may God give me the words to say something that inspires you to dig deeper in your development. If you want, I'm always available for men for mentoring and coaching. That's what I do. And you go to my website, thejrstewart.com, and I'll put the URL in the video here if you want to follow, to reach out to me and contact me if you need additional help. And so the Ways of the Caveman can be found on YouTube or it can be found on Patreon if you want to. That's a great way to get started. Beyond the Ways of the Caveman, the Ways of the Warrior, and then the Ways of the Man God is the evolutionary steps here. So Caveman, Warrior, Man God. In that order. So let's get started. And so our journey is going to start with, and our story is going to start with Genesis. Of course, we know the story of Genesis, of Adam and Eve. So God created this perfect creature called Adam. And I've read a couple of theories from some theologians that believe that Adam was a perfect creature. Perfect in the sense that he communed with God, but he was both male and female, and he was capable of reproducing on his own. He didn't need anything else, anybody else to reproduce. So he possessed both male and female. And so in the garden, everything is perfect. You have a place to stay. I assume that the weather was perfect because Adam didn't wear clothes. He was naked. And that didn't seem to concern him. It didn't seem like he was freezing or too hot or too cold or starving. And he got a chance to talk to God every day. I mean, what more can you ask for? Seems like a perfect life or a perfect existence. Yet, God sensed that there was something wrong with this setup. That man was not, well, God made man. It was like man was meant to be alone. Well, God, you don't know, you made me. Didn't you know that maybe I wasn't meant to be alone before you made me? Why didn't you just make two of us? And that could have solved that, but so I assume that based on this, that maybe God came to the conclusion after Adam was made that something wasn't quite right, that there were some things that were missing, and that these things need to be put in place to help Adam alone. That's my assumption, and that's the assumption of some of the papers that I've read. So we're going to go with that. We're going to explore that particular theory, see if we can vet it out a little bit more. So you have Adam. He's in the garden. He's communing with God. He has everything that, physically, everything that he needs. Spiritually, he's communing with God. So what more does he need there? But yet something is not quite right. And so while Adam is asleep, we know the story. God takes a rib, takes some dirt, molds up another human. And this person now is called a woman. So we have two genders, male, female, man and woman. And I think Adam names her Eve. So the question for me, though, is exactly what did God understand or see to help come to the conclusion that man wasn't meant to be alone? Because Adam didn't know what companionship was. He was always by himself. He was brought into the world by himself. His companion was God. And I guess whatever animals existed around him, but that's more for him to manage or care over. That's not really for companionship. They were not really pets, I don't believe. So what is it that God was focusing on here that wanted to solve? Well, not Eve is in the picture. And Eve, Adam falls deeply in love with Eve, sort of a Love Jones, right away. He's like just smitten with her. And not just him, I mean, we read further on in the book of Genesis how the angels, would come down and sometimes give up their angel status, their middle management. They manage the universe for God. To give that up, to go be with the sons of the daughters. The daughters of man, which is basically a nice way of saying women. So not only is the first man attracted to a woman, but even angels who are willing to give up their spot in heaven to go be with the daughters of man. So this lets me know that women play a very important role in this whole process. And so we're going to talk about the process as we get to understanding what our true purpose is. And so for the first thing that we have to understand is that women play a very important role in all of this. The next thing that we're going to discuss is the Bible says that really Eve was to be a helpmate, a helper. And so I always ask the question, exactly what is it? What is it? You have a purpose for creating her, because you say, well, man needs companionship. We weren't meant to be alone. I assume that you came to that conclusion after you created him, and that man communing with you was not enough. It was not enough. Because then you decided that you need to create a companion for him. Another one of him, except a little smaller, probably cleaner, smelled better. She was soft. Adam probably had muscles because he was designed to work. And some of the essence of Adam was split out of him and was put into Adam too, the woman, Eve. So what was extracted out was some of the emotional things was taken out of him. The reproductive things were taken out of him. So some of the logic and reasoning, analytical, was taken out of him. And so as a result, he was probably a little more analytical than she was, and she was a little more emotional and dealt with emotions better than him. But in reality, the two of them were one at one time, one flesh. And you can see that becomes part of the strategy. Later on, if you read your Bible, the two become one. Husbands, leave their families. Wives, leave their family. Two of them marry. They become one flesh. And so you have God creating another person in order to help Adam. And Adam didn't need help paying the bills. He didn't need help hunting or food. All his needs were taken care of. So exactly what is it that Eve brought to the table that she was supposed to help him with? And so I'm going to get to that. We're going to start with talking about the purpose that Eve serves, and then we're going to talk about man's purpose, and then we're going to wrap it up. And so what is it that she was supposed to help Adam with? What purpose did she serve in this equation? And so I think that in the bigger picture, her job was not to help Adam with his physical existence, not help him keep a house or rake up the leaves. And I think a lot of times there's some women who are bothered by this whole helpmate term. And I think in the context in which we use it, we almost use it as if this means something a notch or two above slave. Oh, well, she's supposed to do what I say and follow my command and just follow behind me and do what I say. I'm the master here. I'm the Lord and master of my domain. And my wife is just my helpmate. Well, if you look at it that way, that really is kind of archaic way of looking at it. And I don't believe that was the case. So I don't think that if Adam had a physical problem and needed help with the garden, paradise, that snap of the finger, my thought alone would change that. I could fix all of that. But what is it that God couldn't fix? Evidently, God couldn't manifest his love for Adam in a way that Adam could feel it. Couldn't touch him. God wasn't there in a physical form. God was in a spiritual form. Could talk to him, could commune with him, We can sit down and chat about the universe, particle versus wave duality, symmetry in the universe. We can talk about all those things. Weak forces, strong forces, gravity, electromagnetism, all the key forces of the universe we could talk about. Not that Adam would be interested, I'm sure, because it seemed like Adam was rather naive and innocent, made that way. No reason not to be that way. You haven't experienced anything. You haven't lived anything. You don't know what crime is. You don't know what disease is. And so now there's Eve. And so I think part of the bigger purpose, talking about Eve, was that part of her purpose was to help Adam find his way back to God. Like, oh my God, JR, what are you saying? What does that mean? He's in paradise with God. What do you mean find his way back? So I think that in all of this, what's missing out of the Bible. So here's where I'm going to use my creative liberty to sort of fill in the blanks of the story of creation for you. So I think when God created Adam, that he pretty much knew that this relationship couldn't last forever. Can't keep my perfect creation in this particular state for very long. At some point, Adam is going to reproduce, and I want Adam to reproduce. I want him to populate the world. But on top of that, in order to do that, Adam's going to need certain skills and tools. He's going to find and be able to solve problems and deal with things. I can't always be there to solve all the problems for him. So at some point, this process is going to take on an automatic nature. But through all of that, I don't want Adam to get lost, so lost, that he loses his ability to commune with me. That this is the connection, the pipeline. So I'm going to create this other entity called a woman, named Eve. The two of them are going to be drawn to each other because they would start out as one person. And so when you're selecting your mate, when you're selecting the person that you're going to marry, this goes for both men and women. So this is joint advice. Look for someone that you see yourself in. It's called compatibility. See, when Adam looked at Eve and Eve looked at Adam, all they saw was the other person. They saw things in the other person that they were familiar. They didn't have any history together. They didn't know each other before she was given life. So how in the world are they going to fall in love? Strangers. But they weren't strangers. She was made from him. He recognized things in her that was part of him, that was extracted out. The person that he falls in love with partially is part of him. He falls in love with himself, which is part of the strategy. When the Bible talks about loving your mate like you love yourself, they're giving you the clue right there, the hint of what this was about. You love your wife like you love yourself. You don't do harm to yourself, so you don't do harm to her. Because the two of you become one flesh. Spiritually, not physically. So how do we get back to this oneness? How does man find his way back to God? How do we do that, JR? Well, first of all, you have to accept that the wife in this relationship, Eve, the Bible doesn't talk about their interaction in the garden, but if I base it on the life that I know, what I know about women and my wife, I could see Eve in paradise saying, hey, Adam, look, I organized these leaves and put them off to the side, and you came and laid them and spread them all around again. You're making a mess in our garden, our paradise. So can you try not to do that again? Yeah, okay, I'm not going to do it again until he does it again. Maybe, I'm just assuming. Maybe he doesn't do it again, who knows? But I can see, picture in my mind, that Eve was there sort of organizing, helping create some order in paradise. And really what the role of the woman is Because the man's job, his responsibility, part of his duty, is to create order. You should have a peaceful household, a peaceful marriage. You should have order with your children and your relationship with them, with the outside world, at work. All these things. You should have some order in it. That's your job, to create order. Because the world is filled with chaos. It always has been and always will be. And in order to deal with that chaos, you need to be able to think. I'll give you a personal example. When I go to work, when I come home, when the wife has made the bed up and cleaned the bedroom up, how energized I am because of that. It makes me feel good. Like, wow, I'm coming home, returning home to a clean bedroom, clean house. And so I have come to the conclusion that it's best for me to go along with this process, because it's a process that, one, is beneficial to me. I feel good coming home to a clean house, clean bedroom, clean clothes. And so in return for the gift that she's given me, I do my best to say thank you each and every time, to let her know that I, one, recognize what she's done, and two, that I'm appreciative for what she brings. And also for that, to understand that she is managing this process of order inside this household. That also led me to conclude that I need to stop complaining about her doing what comes natural to her. You say, well, JR, it's natural stuff. What are you talking about? Do you know how many men that I coach and mentor, and I hear the same complaint? Blame, blame, blame. My wife does this. My wife does that. She doesn't recognize me. She doesn't appreciate me. She doesn't trust me. Going through my phone, looking over my shoulder, going through my... I've heard all the stories. And I don't want to come across as uncaring, but in the bigger picture, I don't care. I don't. Because I understand that it doesn't have to be that way. And that if you stop focusing on what she's doing or not doing, and focus on getting yourself right, understanding the bigger picture of what's going on, where you can change your thought pattern, you'll see that all these things that bother you are things that shouldn't bother you, that they're okay. That your wife is just being herself. She's doing what she was naturally designed to do. She's sort of the QA department, quality assurance. She's there to help you become a better person. Men say, oh, well, she's always trying to change me. Well, there's some truth in that. And the truth is that that's her job. Stop complaining about it. Stop focusing on this as a negative. Once I started learning and came into some knowledge, then these things stop bothering me. Things are going to unfold and happen the way they're supposed to. Your wife is going to be herself. One of the greatest gifts that your wife can give you? So I've talked about this, and I had a coaching I used to do called Finding Venus, where I coach men on how to go out and attract women, get the woman that they want. And I gathered this knowledge through trial and error, through experimenting, until I kind of understood what this was all about. Not in a good way, because I use the information in a very foul way. I mean, I'm not a GQ guy. I'm not the best looking guy. I don't have the best looking clothes. I did have a pretty decent sports car back then. I did drive a Corvette. But I didn't really need the Corvette to pick up women. I had a Sentra also that I drove, a Honda Accord. I could pick up women in that. So it wasn't really the car. It wasn't the bling. It wasn't any of those things. Superficial. I didn't even have deep pockets. I didn't make a lot of money. But I became very good with dating women, because I just learned a few things, and I used that information in a very bad way. So I'm tapping myself on the wrist. Bad me. So back to the woman. Her purpose is to help manage your development. You said when she looks at you, when she first looks at you, when Eve first looked at Adam, she was instantly inspired because she saw things that were familiar. She recognized some of her in him. God didn't totally strip emotions out of him and give to her. She ended up with maybe more of the emotional management genes, thinking, feelings than Adam did. But he had some, enough for her to recognize that there was part of her in him. And so when a woman first falls in love with you, when you see that sparkle in her eyes, this is an enormous turn on for men. And it's also a very big disappointment when that's lost. Sometimes men will break up and leave the relationship when that sparkle is no longer there. Because men are actually drawn to that sparkle that they see. They just don't know how to maintain it. Well, sometimes they do it in a very corrupt and evil way. They lie. They tell you how great they are, how good they are. I kiss babies, I hug puppies. I'm a humanitarian, I give. I'm all these wonderful things. And then the more she gets to know you, and starts seeing that you're not those things that she thought, the more you deviate from what she saw initially, the more out of love she becomes. And if she's trapped in a marriage with you, in an arrangement, she may not leave you, but she doesn't like you. You know how many women are stuck in marriages to men that they don't like? Quite a few, actually. I saw a paper once, I think by the University of Minnesota, maybe getting the schools mixed up. That said that 65% of women, educated women, college-educated women, doesn't matter about the color, across the board, who marry men who are beta-type personalities. And to me, beta men are just weak and feckless. They're safe. They go to work. They pay their taxes. They obey the law. But the problem that the beta has is that he doesn't know how to energize the woman that he's with. So she doesn't feel energized. And that becomes a problem. We're going to talk about that energy level as you walk towards God. But here's the beta. He's a safe guy. 35% of the women who are married to betas, who don't divorce them, stay with them, but they don't like their husbands. Could you imagine that? You're in a marriage, you have kids, you have a house, you have responsibilities to each other, are supposed to. And you're stuck in a marriage with a guy that you don't like? Could you imagine what that's like every day? And most of the time we don't think about these things, but I do. I'm paid to think about these things. This is what I do. And so that adage about we run towards pleasure and we run away from pain is true. And so, fellas, if you are a pain in your wife's life, then guess what's happening? She's pushing away from you. She's running away from you. She may not physically leave you, but emotionally she's checking out. And vice versa for women, same thing. When you're pain to your husband in his life, he becomes distant. He pushes away from you. He doesn't want to be close to you. And the two of you become a wrecking ball in each other's lives. That's what you're doing. You're hurting each other. You're saying things. You're snapping at each other. Quick to anger. Slow to forgive. Over time, you lose trust and faith in each other. And you're just there, going through the motions, doing your best to avoid each other. Not to say the one thing that's going to break the camel back. That one little straw. That's no way to live. And it doesn't have to be that way. And this is what this series is about, Ways of the Caveman. Ladies, if you are stuck in this type of marriage and you want things to improve, they're not going to improve on their own. Because if the two of you could fix it, you would have fixed it already. No one purposely wakes up wanting to be unhappy. That doesn't happen. But you may wake up unhappy and decide that if I can't be happy, I'm going to make sure that he's not happy or she's not happy. Envy. And so there's an answer to that. Part of the first step is you can sit down and start watching my videos, The Ways of the Caveman. That's a starting point. And if you adopt the ways of the caveman, for the men out here, listen to this. If you adopt the ways of the caveman, that's a good starting point. Because the ways of the caveman are simply about a couple of things. That as a man, you're designed to work. God gave you the body to work. You know, if your work is mental, then both men and women can do that. But men are more suited for physical work. And up until maybe, I don't know, 50, 70 years ago, 100 years ago, most of the work, activity, trash pickup, sewer, building the streets, construction, bricklaying, all these jobs require physical labor. Men dominate those fields. Things that were more emotional, human interaction, teaching, nursing, generally women dominate those fields. Still do, for the most part. And I know there's some overlap. There are, I think 1% of bricklayers are women. About 1% of the construction workforce is women. So it's not a rule I can simply say that men do physical jobs and women do emotional jobs. Because there's always that 1% exception to the rule. But anyway, I digress. Let me get back on track. The point is that if you need help in these areas, start with the ways of the caveman. The next step, after you watch the videos and you adopt the fact that as a man, you need to work. As a man, you need to secure a place for your family, for your wife and children if you guys decide to have them. You need to provide. That means food, paying utility bills, keeping your utilities on, lights, water, electricity, I mean all this stuff. Internet now, it's a utility. This is all part of life now. This is all part of securing life. And as a man, you need to go out and do that. And be able to do it by yourself, if need be. If your wife helps you in these areas, great. If she decides that she doesn't want to work and want to stay home and keep your home in order, great. She wants to stay home and raise your children, make sure they're off to a good start, great. Whatever it's going to be, it's going to be. And you should be okay with it. You're okay with all of the above. And so at a basic level, these are the things that you draw your strength from, your happiness and your joy. From making sure that you're at least at the caveman level doing caveman things. You secure the home, your cave. You're going out and hunt and bring it home to be able to feed your family. You have a fire there to keep them warm. That's your utilities. You have water. So you take care of the basic things. And if you're doing that at a basic level, you should be okay. You should feel good about yourself. But that's only part of the equation. That's only part of the calculus. The other part of the equation is that the next two steps will complete you. And the next two steps is become a warrior and to walk in the light of God, become a man God. And I'm sorry, I just haven't quite figured out a way to really put those next two steps into videos. I'm not going to talk about them. But what I found is the personal one-on-one coaching and training through someone to help you deal with the pain of your situation. Because let's face it, guys, you can't grow into caveman ways when you're hurt. When you're feeling as though she doesn't trust me, JR, she doesn't appreciate me. I mentor guys who, when we talk one-on-one in our coaching session, sometimes they're in tears. I know they love their wife. They want things to be better. But they're in tears and they're hurt. But I can't coach you beyond the caveman ways until you get past the hurt. You can't be wounded as a warrior. You can't be wounded as a man God. All these things that bothered you, we have to get past that. That requires a great deal of customized one-on-one coaching. And so if you're interested, go to my website, thejrstewart.com. Reach out to me and we can work something out. And so I'm going to end here, but please come back and watch part 2 of the video as I continue to talk about purpose. We're going to pick up where we left off with the purpose of the woman. And then we're going to eventually get to the purpose of the man, and that'll be where we wrap up. So thank you for watching part 1 of this video, and I will see you in the next video, part 2.